In the previous lecture, we learned how to describe a financial system as a network of nodes and edges. Now we take the next step. Once everything is connected, how do we actually measure importance, influence, and fragility? That is the focus of this lecture on key network metrics. Modern finance is not just connected, but globally connected. So the challenge is not merely to see a network, but to quantify it. Over the next slides, we will develop the basic toolkit analysts use to answer questions like which institution is most active, which one acts as a bridge, which one can spread shocks fastest, and what features of the overall structure make a system stable or unstable. Let's begin with a very practical problem. Visual inspection fails when networks become complex. On the left side of this slide, you see what is often called a hairball diagram, a dense tangle of nodes and edges. At first glance, it looks impressive, but it is actually hard to interpret. As the number of nodes and links increases, our visual intuition starts to collapse. We can no longer reliably tell which actors are central, which parts are vulnerable, or how the structure differs across time. That is why the right side of the slide introduces the solution: metrics. Metrics allow us to compare different network states, such as before and after a crisis, identify critical actors that may be too central to fail, and even predict how fast disruptions like liquidity shocks may propagate. Think of it this way. A raw network picture is like looking at a city from above at night. You see lights everywhere, but without measurements, you still do not know which roads are main arteries and which intersections are critical bottlenecks. This slide gives us the analytical framework for the rest of the lecture by separating metrics into two broad scopes: local and global. On the left is the node level, or local, perspective. Here the focus is on individual vertices, meaning specific institutions or actors. We ask questions such as, how connected is this bank? Does it sit on important paths? How close is it to everyone else? And is it connected to other influential players? Metrics like degree, betweenness, closeness, and Eigenvector centrality belong to this category. On the right is the network level or global perspective. Now the focus shifts from one actor to the architecture of the whole system. We study features like density, assortativity, and modularity. In other words, local metrics tell us who matters inside the network, while global metrics tell us what kind of world those actors live in. That distinction is essential because sometimes a system can look safe at the individual level, but still be fragile as a whole. Now we are introduced to one of the most important ideas in network science: centrality. Centrality metrics try to quantify importance, but there is not just one meaning of importance. This slide presents three different interpretations. Degree centrality asks who is most directly connected, so it captures immediate activity or local connectedness. Betweenness centrality asks who controls the bridge, meaning which node lies on the shortest paths between others and can therefore mediate or obstruct flow. Eigenvector centrality asks a more subtle question: who is connected to the powerful? This is not just about having many links, but about having links to already influential nodes. You might notice how the three diagrams visually communicate these differences. One node is central because it has many spokes, another because it sits between clusters, and another because it occupies a prestigious position in a well-connected neighborhood. So from this point onward, remember that influence in a network has multiple dimensions. Let's look closely at degree centrality, the simplest centrality measure. Degree centrality counts the number of direct links connected to a node. In notation, this is written as C sub deg of V equals deg of V, meaning the degree centrality of node V is just its degree, or number of direct neighbors. Conceptually, it measures immediate activity. A node with high degree is like a busy airport with many direct flights, or in financial terms, a hub with many trading or lending relationships. In weighted networks, we often replace plain degree with strength, which is the total volume associated with those links. That matters because having many small transactions is different from having a few extremely large ones. So in financial analysis, degree centrality can help us identify active traders, highly connected institutions, or hubs of market participation, but we should always keep in mind whether we care about the number of relationships or the total size of exposure. In a directed network, not all links mean the same thing. Out degree counts the number of outgoing links from a node, while in degree counts the number of incoming links. The slide interprets out degree as the creditor side. A node with high out degree lends to many others, or distributes claims across many counterparties. In some contexts, that can suggest diversification on the asset side. By contrast, high in degree is associated here with the debtor side, meaning many others point into that node. A node with very high in degree may be too connected to fail because distress at that node immediately affects many incoming counterparties. So even a simple metric like degree becomes more informative when we account for direction. In finance, asking who owes whom is often more important than simply asking who is connected to whom. Next, we come to Betweenness Centrality, which captures the idea of a critical bridge. A node has high betweenness if it lies frequently on the shortest paths between pairs of other nodes. The formula on the slide expresses this by summing over all pairs S and T the fraction of shortest paths between them that pass through node V. Let's unpack the intuition. Imagine two dense groups that are connected mainly through one intermediary. That intermediary may not have the highest number of direct links, but it controls flow between the groups. In a financial network, that could be an institution that channels liquidity, information, or transactions across otherwise separated market segments. If the bridge fails, the network fragments. Liquidity cannot move efficiently, and contagion may take a very different form. So betweenness centrality helps us spot institutions that are structurally important because they connect communities, not necessarily because they are the largest or most active. The central idea is recursive. A node is important if it is connected to other important nodes. That may sound circular at first, but it captures something very real. Not all connections are equal. A tie to a major global institution carries more significance than a tie to a small peripheral one. The formula expresses this by saying that the score of a node depends on the scores of its neighbors, scaled by a factor lambda. So influence is passed through the network. Lending to a globally systemically important financial institution, or SIFI, can matter much more than lending to a small local bank. Think of it this way. Degree counts how many friends you have, but Eigenvector centrality asks how influential your friends are. In systemic risk analysis, this helps identify nodes that sit inside the network's core of prestige, power, or interdependence. Now we move to closeness centrality. Closeness centrality is based on distance. Specifically, it is the inverse of farness, where farness means the total or average distance from one node to all other nodes in the network. The formula shows that the closeness of node U is n-1 divided by the sum of distances from every other node to U. A node with high closeness can reach others through relatively short paths. In finance, that means shocks starting from such a node can spread quickly through the system. The concentric circles in the diagram help visualize this. The central blue node is at short distance from many others, while peripheral nodes are farther away. So closeness is less about prestige or brokerage, and more about transmission efficiency. It tells us which nodes are in positions from which information, stress, or contagion can travel fast. Up to this point, we have focused mostly on node importance. This slide shifts us toward network topology and community structure. Topology means the overall architecture that emerges from many local connections. In the figure, we can see several densely connected clusters with a few links between them. That visual naturally leads to two global ideas: clustering and modularity. Clustering refers to the tendency of nodes to form tightly knit triads or small groups, often represented by triangles. Modularity refers to the division of a network into more distinct communities. In finance, these communities might correspond to banking sectors, asset classes, regions, or other functional groupings. When modularity is high, local shocks may be contained within communities rather than spreading everywhere immediately. So topology is not just an abstract structural property. It influences how resilient or fragile a system is when stress appears. This slide focuses on network density, which measures how saturated a network is with links. The formula shown is D equals E divided by N times N-1, which captures the proportion of possible directed links that actually exist. On the left, the sparse network has relatively few connections. In that case, shocks may dissipate more easily because there are fewer channels through which distress can travel. On the right, the dense network has many more interconnections. That can be beneficial in calm times because it supports sharing, diversification, and flow, but it can also amplify shocks once distress begins. The slide captures this with the phrase systemic saturation. Think of a dense financial network like a highly connected electrical grid. It can operate efficiently, but once a failure occurs, the many connections may carry the disruption rapidly across the entire system. So density is a classic example of a metric whose interpretation depends on context. More connected can mean more robust or more contagious. Here we examine the clustering coefficient, which measures local resilience. It is the probability that two neighbors of a node are also connected to each other. Visually, a closed triangle has high clustering, while an open V-shaped structure has low clustering. The formula is shown, C sub y equals 2e sub I divided by k sub I times k sub I minus 1, formalizes how many neighbor-to-neighbor links exist compared with how many could exist. In financial terms, clustering can create redundancy. If one connection fails, there may still be alternative local routes, which supports resilience. But the slide also warns us about a downside. Tightly clustered groups can become echo chambers of distress. In other words, shocks can circulate repeatedly inside a tightly knit local community. So clustering is not purely good or bad. It can stabilize local interaction while also making local contagion more intense. This slide develops the idea of modularity by describing community structure as a kind of firebreak. The network shown is divided into two sectors, blue and red, with only limited connections between them. Modularity measures the extent of that compartmentalization. When modularity is high, communities are more internally connected than externally connected. In finance, that can increase systemic safety because distress in one sector is less likely to jump immediately into another. If sector A crashes, but the links to sector B are weak, then the problem may remain relatively isolated. The word firebreak is a great analogy. In wildfire control, a firebreak is a barrier that stops flames from spreading. In a network, modularity can serve the same purpose by limiting the reach of contagion. Of course, too much separation can also reduce beneficial interaction. So once again, we see that structure involves trade-offs. Now we come to assortativity and the rich club effect. Assortativity asks whether nodes tend to connect to similar nodes. Similarity might mean similar degree, size, status, or role. In many financial systems, highly connected institutions tend to interact with other highly connected institutions. That pattern is often called the rich club effect. The figure on this slide shows a dense core of major players connected strongly among themselves, with many smaller peripheral nodes outside that core. Why does this matter? Because the core can concentrate influence and vulnerability at the same time. If one major core bank fails, the tight connectivity within the rich club can transmit the shock almost immediately to other major players. So assortativity helps us understand whether the system is mixing broadly across types of nodes or concentrating ties among similar elites. That has major consequences for systemic stability. This slide shows how these metrics are used in practice to identify a SIFI, a systemically important financial institution. The network contains banks of different sizes and colors, and one bank is highlighted as the key concern. The striking point is that the identified SIFI is not necessarily the largest node by asset size. Instead, the slide notes that it has high betweenness risk despite medium asset size. A bank can be structurally critical because of its position, not just because of its balance sheet. If it connects otherwise separate parts of the system, then its failure could disrupt the entire network. That is exactly why network analysis adds value beyond standard accounting measures. Size matters, but position matters too. Regulators who only look at assets may miss institutions that are small in size, but large in structural importance. This summary slide gives us the network analyst's toolkit in one table. It separates metrics by scope and key concept while linking each one to a financial interpretation. Degree is a node-level metric about volume of links and can represent activity or market share. Betweenness is also node-level, focused on shortest paths, and relates to intermediary or bridge risk. Closeness is node-level as well and captures distance, which we interpret as the speed of contagion. Eigenvector centrality measures recursive influence and helps identify institutions that are too interconnected to fail. Then we move to global metrics. Density reflects saturation and system-wide amplification, while modularity captures community structure and the presence of firebreaks or sector isolation. This table is useful because it reminds us that no single metric tells the whole story. Different questions require different measurements, and sound analysis comes from matching the metric to the problem. We end the lecture by moving from measurement to management. Metrics are not only descriptive tools. They are meant to support action. By mapping the financial ecosystem, network metrics reveal hidden structures of risk that balance sheets alone may miss. They show us critical bridges, dense cores, modular barriers, and fast contagion channels. But the closing message is just as important. Stability depends on how regulators and analysts interpret these maps. A map by itself does not protect the system. Protection comes from using the map wisely, for example, by strengthening vulnerable bridges, monitoring highly central institutions, and designing fire breaks that contain local distress. So the core lesson of this lecture is that measurement is the foundation of management. Once we can quantify structure, we can begin to govern it more effectively.